I was supposed to smile, shake hands, and kill a princess. Rebels wrote it as intervention on the brief. Same sin, softer syllables. I memorized the cover in a supply lift, repeating Ambassador Cole until the vowels felt expensive. The disguise came with a silver pin, a diplomatic cadence, and a blade that didn't exist to scanners. It also came with rules. None of the rules mentioned what to do if the target leaned on your shoulder. Starwave felt me enter long before the attendants did. Arcan living crystal cruisers don't just carry people, they taste them. The deck flexed with my weight like shallow surf. Ribs of translucent lattice arched overhead, their veins pulsing blue in sync with an engine I felt in my bones. The air smelled of clean rain and peeled citrus, and something bright, like lightning held politely in a jar. Ambassador Cole, trilled the escort drone, a glassy prism trailing strings of mist. Parade reception at Tertiary Promenade. Eager, I said, and peeled off down a service corridor the drone hadn't offered. Diplomats find ribbon cuttings. Scouts find the back doors. Service routes spoke a language I trusted. Handholds groan where people slipped, hatch lips worn by impatient fingers. Conduit bundles tied with honest, ugly twine, where graceful systems had failed at 3 in the morning. I palmed vents, counted cameras, followed the ship's dimmer heartbeat. Along the spine, no one painted for guests. Starwave purred and let me through, but with the reluctant grace of a cat allowing a stranger to pet it once. The ship shuddered. Sharp, corrective, a pilot's reprimand to inertia. The crystal around me sang at a pitch that made my teeth wince. I caught a rail. She didn't. She slid a step and steadied against the wall, and the wall flowed its texture to meet her palm like it knew her. Gray wrap with threads of starlight, soft-soled boots built for ceremony but scuffed at the toes, hair wound up in a crown that wanted to be undone. Princess Vera did not look surprised to find me where I didn't belong. She looked mildly entertained, like a surgeon finding a poet among scalpels. "Your promenade is the other way," she said. Her voice wasn't a bell. It was blade clean and unhurried. "Casual check," I said, pretending to adjust my translator cuff. Habit from dull postings. She stepped in, unarmed in the way only the very powerful can risk. She took my wrist, cool fingers, precise, and the cuff thrummed with a private chime. "Then let me help you tune it," she breathed, close enough to taste the bright metal citrus on her skin, close enough that if she told the ship to hold me, the floor would grow hands. "You watch more closely than a diplomat," she whispered. I let my gaze meet hers, and not wander anywhere dangerous. "You move more quietly than a princess." A fractional smile, or a warning. The hull sighed as Starwave trimmed vector. The tremor that went through her hand wasn't performance. It was a micro shake you get when you've braced too long. I didn't plan the next part. I tilted my shoulder and gave the smallest amount of support. She took it. A beat stretched. The cuff synced. My pulse didn't. Hers did. Or the ship pretended it for her. When she stepped back, she left a ghost of warmth on my jacket and a line I couldn't uncross. "Better," she said, composed again. "Your ship calls itself Ambassador's Pride. Loud name." "Old ship," I lied smoothly. "New job." Her eyes indexed me like coordinates. "We'll see you on the promenade, Ambassador." "Highness?" She turned and glided like gravity owed her interest. I watched the faint aftershock in her fingers fade, noted it for later, and watched the drone spin circles of disapproval until I gave it a pat and kept going the wrong way. The spine carried coolant and gossip. Someone had scratched a triangle into a crystal rib behind a misting valve. A clean, fresh extremist mark from an imperial splinter that wanted Vera harder, crueler, less willing to speak the word peace without iron after it. It glowed faintly where the lattice bled light. Whoever cut it wanted friends to know and enemies to worry. The map the drone projected tried to herd me toward ceremony. I asked it politely to show me Vera's suites. It hesitated, the way a well-trained pet hesitates before jumping on forbidden furniture. The ambassador pin on my lapel tilting the balance, it obeyed. Her hallway was a stage dressed as an artery. Cameras perched where no cameras should be on a living ship. Matte black, ugly, posed as vents and pollen. 2 angles on the door, one cross-shot from a ceiling bloom, another slave to a relay hiding behind a waterfall of microfilament light. External rig inside an organic hull, arrogant, risky, useful to whoever wanted her leverage ready. I fed a lie through the cuff. The relay blinked. The cameras slept like tired men who had promised to stay awake and meant it. The ship felt my tampering and pulled back like a host, letting a rude guest pass to avoid a scene. I didn't cross her threshold. I didn't need to. The antechamber exhaled frost and flowers. Biomorphic seating pulsed slow, like a heartbeat, coached toward calm. I slid a mirror wafer to the frame and angled it. A lens winked, a foreign pupil reflecting the man I said I was. Ambassador Cole smiled from the mirrored edge. Jack Rowan, rebel scout, didn't. On the promenade, Starwave threw light the way old empires threw coins. The floor sang in tailored bass as people walked, weaving steps into a low orchestra. Delegates floated in grav cradles, with names drifting above them like tame auroras. Servitor plants offered cups of glacier taste that left your mouth believing in winter again. The ship dimmed when a speech needed gravitas, brightened when applause required courage. You didn't attend an event aboard Starwave. You were metabolized by it. Vera stood on a raised pedal grown from the hull, attendants aligned behind her like a constellation practicing royalty. Whatever tremor I had seen in the corridor was gone. Her posture was a blade she aimed at the room. She saw me. The room thinned. It's foolish to say chemistry has mass, but my lungs disagreed. We remembered the corridor, her fingers at my wrist, my shoulder under her weight. 2 masks fogged for the same breath. Something passed between us that wasn't protocol. Attraction, inconvenient and adult, flared and tried to pretend it was nothing. Ambassador Cole, she said. Microphone voice now, polished to reach the back row without raising itself. Welcome aboard Starwave. I trust our corridor was satisfactory. Impeccable hull integrity, I said, and let the smile show 1 tooth. Excellent handrails. Efficient observations, rare in politics. Efficient men don't last in politics, I said, before I could sand it down. Or they're removed. Her face didn't move. Her left knuckles told on her, tightened half a breath, then smooth. She turned to clasp palms with a Ceres trade envoy in mirrored silk. I slid to the edge, doing the diplomat's graceful drift, while my brain counted exits, measured ship blink intervals, and traced the arc of 3 attendants' hands in slow paranoia. One wore her belt like it was heavier than cloth. One breathed shallow with the air hunger of someone concealing powder or fear. One never looked at Vera's face, only at her throat, the way a butcher eyes the place to cut. When speeches dulled and the floor orchestra softened to private music, I returned to the spine. The cameras near her door were awake again, their LEDs pinprick smug. Someone had reset them while I was sampling glacier water. 3 new triangles marked the corridor ribs, one gouged deep enough that the ship's glow bled through in sullen thread. Whoever wanted her compromised, wanted it urgently. I could go lie down, recite the assassin's catechism, dream of clean blades and clean exits. I could be Cole until the perfect window opened and close it on her neck. Instead, I stood with my palm on the ship's cool skin and listened to Starwave breathe. The living hull answered with a patient tide hum. Past the hum, softer, I thought I heard a heartbeat that wasn't the ship's and wasn't mine. Maybe it was the noise people make when they refuse to live as inventory. "You watch more closely than a diplomat," she had said. She was right. And now I couldn't stop. The pin on my lapel warmed with the ship's respect. The invisible blade in my pocket warmed with my hand. I uncurled my fist and let the weapon rest. Not dropped. Not yet. Just delayed. Enough to trace the hidden relay with my eyes closed. Enough to promise myself I'd pull every ugly eye from her walls before I slept. Enough to admit, privately, that the tiniest tremor in her fingers had rung through me like a tuning fork, finding home. Tomorrow would bring rules. Poison. Lies with official letterhead. Maybe blood. Tonight, Starwave pulsed like a city-sized heartbeat, and a spark took root where my carefully disciplined life had no shelter at all. The private dinner was designed to disarm me. No orchestra. No orbiting dignitaries. Just a crescent table that seemed to grow from the deck. Petals of plates extruded like the ship had learned etiquette from a botanical sketchbook. The window showed Ellis 3 as a green coin framed by station lights. I wore the diplomat smile. Vera wore serenity, like well-tailored armor. "You found my cameras," she said, almost amused. "I found cameras," I answered. "The ship didn't grow them." "Then someone is trying to learn what I look like when I sleep." "Vulnerable," I said softly. "Or dangerous." She lifted a glass. The liquid inside held a tiny galaxy of suspended light. "That depends who's watching." A servitor plant crept, leaves like glass, and presented a dish that smelled like sea rain on hot stone. I let it pass without tasting. "Habit," she noticed. "So cautious for an ambassador." "Bad teeth," I deadpanned. She smirked, leaned, and tapped the rim of my translator cuff with a fingernail. Bright sound. The hull hummed. I almost forgot to watch the door. Almost. The wrong server came in 2 minutes late. His shoes didn't squeak in rhythm with the floor's music. He placed a bowl by Vera's left hand, then turned his face away, as if light hurt his eyes. The air carried a sweet metal note that didn't belong. I moved before I finished the thought. "Don't." Too late. She had already taken a polite sip, the barest touch. She paused, blinked, inhaled once too sharply. Her fingers trembled. I dropped the ambassador. I caught the back of her neck and tilted her jaw, forcing a swallow reflex as I thumbed the cuff to hard burn. The shock rippled through both our nerves, driving the toxin toward my filter patch under the sleeve. I tasted iron and sugar. "What?" she gasped, eyes widening, then narrowing with fury at herself, at me, at the universe that makes a princess prove she can breathe. "Spasm in 5, I said, counting her pulse against my wrist. 4. It hit. Her body arched. I wrapped an arm around her waist, keeping her from cracking her spine on the living chair. The ship dimmed, sensing distress, folding sound away to give pain privacy. Her breath fought for pattern. I set mine slow and loud and close, a metronome for panic. In, out. In, out. She found it. Matched it. The tremor traveled through both of us like a low voltage, determined to become flame. Our faces were too near. Her pupils went huge, then disciplined. I could see the tiny fracture line in her left iris, where some childhood fall had left a secret star. "Do not kiss me," she hissed between clenched teeth, and somehow the command steadied her. "Wasn't planning to," I said, lying to both of us. Another shock from the cuff drove the poison past the threshold where my patch could bind it. Her breath stuttered, then smoothed. I held her an extra second, because I didn't trust gravity not to change its mind. When she could stand, she did. The empty bowl steamed innocent on the table. She stared at it as if she could will it to confess. "Security," she said to the air. Then, to me, quieter. "I trust you exactly as much as you just risked for me." "That's a dangerous amount," I replied. "Good," she said, and the corner of her mouth might have been a smile. "I'm tired of playing safe." We quarantined the chamber. The wrong server never existed according to the manifest. His trail smeared into the ship's memory as if someone had rubbed a thumb over fresh ink. I climbed into the feed, slid thin knives through permissions, and chased heat signatures down ducts, while Vera stood in the doorway and made the hallway believe in her calm. "Why are there cameras in your suite?" I asked without looking up. "Insurance, leverage, worship," she said. "Pick a word and an enemy. If it's worship, it's the kind that ends in sacrifice. Then let us end it first." We didn't find the server. We found instead a relay piggybacking on the ship's whisper channel, small, ugly, and perfectly placed to forward whatever it liked. "What are you hiding from me?" I asked the device, and told it I was its father. It answer-spilled a nest of codes that smelled like Dominion admin with a rebel aftertaste. False flag flavor. I licked my thumb, metaphorically, and turned the page. A packet sat with its head bowed, waiting for the signal. Detonation map. Ellis 3 Summit Hall sketched in neat lines. Charges marked with innocent symbols that would look like maintenance to any bored camera. The timestamp moved in their language, a slow spiral. "Someone intends to explode peace," I said. "Then sell the smoke as evidence," she finished. Her voice went winter. "Pinned on your rebels." "Not mine," I shot back. "You came here with a blade for me." We stared, both honest and furious. I wished I could pull the truth back into my mouth. She took a single step toward me, and the space between us snapped tighter than wire. "Say it," she whispered. "Say the part after the blade. The part where I didn't." She exhaled. "Progress." We argued, hard, about tactics, about lies, about mercy in a game that only respected spectacle. Her anger was clean. Mine was tired. We reached for each other in the same breath and stopped with foreheads almost touching, both of us breathing like swimmers who had found the same surface. "You're still watching," she murmured. "You're still pretending you don't want me to." We didn't kiss. We made a pact instead, the adult version of a promise carved into a bridge. Stop the attack, burn the relay, expose the theater. If one of us fell, the other finished the play and bowed to no one. Ellis 3 looked pastoral from orbit, all green smears and blue veins. Up close, the summit hall was a bright-wired shell perched on a lake, its roof a petal of mirrors designed to catch speeches and throw them into the sky. Delegations arrived in tidy waves. The Dominion's crest flared on banners grown from flexible solar film. My fake credentials sang. Vera walked as if she had never tasted poison an hour before. "Jack," she said in a bare whisper as we passed under a security arch that pretended to be art. "If we succeed, they will call me traitor." "They'll call me worse," I said. "Then let them be imaginative." Inside, the hall was a maze disguised as a circle. Projectors hung like fruit. The control room tucked itself into a balcony that forgot it was visible. I slipped in with 2 techs, arguing about who owned whose idea. No one looked at the ambassador with the bored face. I palmed the console and fed the relay a lie. When the charges burned, their signal would think the projectors were their cousins. The hall would bloom with light instead of shrapnel. It would show names instead of blood. Vera took the stage early, not her slot. She stepped onto the speaking pedal as if she belonged anywhere she stood. The room fussed, then obeyed. 1,000 lenses corrected focus. "My friends," she said, and somehow made the words sound unpracticed. Tonight, we will not be polite. I watched the invisible clock approach the spiral tick. My skin understood the moment and tried to run before it arrived. Now, I hissed to the console, and the console chose to believe. Detonation climbed the wire like a rumor. The projectors opened their throats. Instead of fire, the entire sky screen erupted in blue-white diagrams. The map of the hall, the charges blooming like sickly flowers, the relay signatures writing a Dominion admin code with rebel perfume layered on top. Names rose where smoke should have. Vera didn't flinch. She pointed. General Corbin's office approved these security modifications. The same office arranged rebel access to prove the danger. Look, she turned as the screens rotated, magnifying the authorizations. This is not peace. This is a contract written in panic. Chaos tried to take a step. She didn't let it. She stood taller and did something no one had prepped for. She named her own. And I, she said, voice clear. I invited a man here who came to kill me. The hall inhaled hard enough to lift the roof. I walked onto the stage, because leaving her alone inside her courage felt like a small betrayal. I took the second microphone. I looked at the crowd, then at her. I'm Jack Rowan, I said. I posed as Ambassador Cole. My assignment was assassination. I failed immediately. Nervous laughter tried to be born. It died when I didn't smile. I failed, I went on, because she noticed the cameras, because she leaned on my shoulder during a hard course correction, because I watched too closely and saw a person, and now all I can do is tell you the truth and see if the ceiling stays up. The screen spun evidence like a planetarium of guilt. Security moved in the way security moves when it realizes the script is wrong. Someone tried to cut the feed. My reroute held. The projectors kept singing names like a choir that couldn't be bribed. Vera turned to me, not with gratitude, not with triumph, but with that same terrible honesty from the corridor. A spark passed between us, so plain I saw two envoys glance away, as if from an intimate room. This is what they planned, she said to the hall. This is what we choose instead. We had crossed the line. We were on record. We were not going back. They raised bounties on our faces before we cleared docking clamps. My new criminal portrait looked well rested. Hers looked like a god they wanted to chain. We ran anyway. The ship we stole wasn't proud. It was a rusted freighter named Old Moth because the engine lights flickered like tired wings. I flew by feel, Vera by nerve, both of us listening for the sound of pursuit inside the rattle. The nav pane was held together by copied licenses and a prayer that didn't know who to ask. Which way is away? I asked. Where no one can sell our location for breakfast, she said, and marked a vector that tasted like exile. We burned to an abandoned station drifting over a dead moon, a lattice of docks around a hollow heart, the kind of place smugglers loved until even smugglers forgot. Old Moth coughed us into a hangar rhymed with frost. The lights came on like they had arthritis. We sealed the doors and listened to our own breath echo back wrong. Silence. Then the click-tick of cooling metal. Then nothing. The kind of nothing that tells you if you lower your shoulders, gravity won't punish you for it. We set up in a maintenance bay. I found 2 heaters, one honest, one that stole from the wall when it thought I looked away. Vera dragged a crate, rolled her shoulders, and winced when fabric pulled wrong over her collarbone. You're bleeding, I said. It's unfashionable. Unavoidable, I countered, and peeled back her wrap with hands that remembered kindness before they remembered knives. A shallow cut traced her clavicle, clean as a signature, inked there by a flying shard when security decided truth was treason. I washed it with water that tasted like old coin and sealed it with tape that bragged about being medical in 3 languages. Her breath hitched when the cold touched skin. The heater hummed. Old moth settled like an old dog on tile. Better? I asked. Statistically, she said, and then softer. Yes. We ate ration bars the color of compromises and sat nearer the heat than pride liked. No titles, no attendance, just the hum of emptiness and the weight of what we had done, pressing the air thinner. My peace marriage, she said suddenly, as if throwing a bone into the dark to see what bites. You want the gossip version? I want the part you can't sell on a newsfeed. She held her hands to the coil, fingers opening and closing like she was relearning ownership. They pair you to make you predictable. Not love, not even partnership. A merger. The kind where you exchange access codes and the lawyers cheer. You smile for 1 billion people, and then you stop belonging to yourself. You never belong to yourself? I asked. I belong to the plan, she said. It's the same thing once you say it often enough. I told her about the farm I didn't save and the job I did instead, about a little sister who learned to hate stars, about how rebellion eats its saints and calls it fuel. I didn't dramatize. I just spoke until my voice felt like a hand placed lightly on a door. The pauses stretched. The looks got braver. She touched my cheek with 2 fingers and a threat of laughter. You're still looking, she said. Like what you see. Yes, I answered, not dodging, and watched the word hit her like heat after a long cold. We didn't hurry. The kiss landed careful, then certain. She tasted like glacier water stolen from a feast and sparks blown sideways by engine wash. Her hand found my neck, not to own it, but to climb out of something invisible. When she pulled back, it wasn't to retreat. It was to stare like she'd found a star that didn't obey maps. Say nothing foolish, she warned. I can do quiet, I said. We learned each other slowly, the way you learn a damaged road by driving it at dusk. Fingers laced, coats became blankets. The heater painted us copper. There were no big speeches, only the choices that stack until they look like a vow. We stayed until the window thinned from coal to ash. For the first time since I lied my name into existence, I slept without waking at every click. Morning smelled like cold metal and something sweeter I didn't name. Vera found a terminal that still remembered it had been loyal, coaxed it awake, and dug where an old scientist would hide secrets, inside his own boredom. Dr. Thorne, she said, eyes narrowing. My mother's favorite cautionary ghost. I joined her at the screen. Thorne's log wasn't encrypted for strength, it was encrypted for shame. Once we convinced it to want to talk, it spilled like a throat relieved to confess. Dates, transfers, a timeline that made history blush. The war had been engineered, not born, not stumbled into. Cultivated. Threat models seeded in border skirmishes. Escalations approved because markets liked them. False flag proofs arranged so the Dominion and the rebels would grow each other's monsters. Thorne named a council that wasn't supposed to exist. He named my side's donors. He named hers. He had receipts that didn't care who cried when they printed. At the end of a long page, a line written like a man begging the future to know he'd tried. I built a machine to keep us safe from panic. They used it to sell panic safely. Vera's jaw tightened until I heard a tooth protest. I felt the same sound in my own bones. This kills my house, she said. It kills my cause, I said. Then maybe we can make room for something that isn't a corpse. We backed up the logs twice, then twice again. We printed 1 copy onto the station's old carbon tape, the kind you can't edit without literal fire. I slid it into a pack and felt suddenly like a courier in a fable. Bring this to the city. Expect wolves. They'll hunt us, I said. They already are, she answered. We need a place to speak where silence can't be bought. A proximity alarm coughed to life, a polite chime that meant murder. I killed the lights. Vera grabbed the pack with the tape without being told. Outside the hangar doors, engines whispered with professional courtesy. A Black Ops team moves like the idea of a team. General Corbin's crest winked on a shuttle fin because corruption loves a signature. "Ravine exit," I said, pointing to a maintenance tunnel that opened to the station's underbelly, an old service route that spat ships toward a canyon carved by ice on the dead moon. "They'll expect exterior. They won't expect this old throat." We ran bent and careful. The tunnel breathed stale cold. The door at the end refused 3 codes before it relented to Vera saying, "Please," in a language the station remembered from its last honest day. Bioluminescent lichen painted the ravine in drowned aurora. We slid Old Moth along the canyon floor with engines barely thinking. Drones fanned above like metal bats. "Priority is her." A voice crackled across a command channel I should not have accessed. "Take the asset alive." Asset. The word snapped something in Vera's face. "I am not a contract," she said to nobody and to everyone. "Then let's write our own." They boxed us with precision. I cut a vertical route, then another, turned pursuit into geometry. Corbin's shuttle swung to block the only wide sky. Perfect place for a stand. Perfect place for a decision. "If I stay with the rebels," I said, seeing the paths like threads, "they'll use me to reach you. If you return to the Dominion, they'll use you to make peace look like obedience." "So?" she asked. "So I leave with you," I said. "Not to your palace, not to my camp, to us." She looked at me like I'd given her a continent, and then apologized for the weather. "Accepted," she said. We cut Corbin's escape by flying straight at his open maw and forcing him to flinch. Vera took the external comm, her voice a scalpel again. "General," she said, on a channel built to intimidate. "Stand down. Live." He laughed because men like that always do. We slid under his wing and spat chaff like prayer beads. Drones ate light and lost aim. We dove. We bled heat. The ravine narrowed to a throat a ship shouldn't survive. We did, because Old Moth still believed in stubbornness. A clean shot presented itself. I could have painted Corbin out of history. My finger found the trigger and didn't squeeze. "Vera," I said. She closed her eyes, then opened them as if someone had unlocked the room behind them. "Show them something new," she said. "Mercy." I took my hand off the trigger. We sent the proof instead. The logs, the routes, the receipts, on every public channel the ravine could bounce. We opened our faces to the feed and let people decide if they could recognize hands unclenched. Corbin lived to watch his house start burning from the edges no water can reach. We didn't go back to the Dominion. We didn't crawl to the rebels. We went to Nora, a quiet forest moon where trees translated wind into slow grammar. We built a cabin that creaked like an old song and learned the long work of repair. We stacked wood. We taught a borrowed stove our names. At night, when the quiet finally held, she would smile in the dark and ask, "Still looking, Jack?" "Yes," I would say, honestly, without a war and without masks. Morning would bring the next fight. But now we had a we strong enough to carry it there, and a truth heavy as a star, waiting to be lifted into view. Nora gave us a week before the world found our door. A fern grew through the porch slats as if it had a schedule. The stove learned to purr. We learned where the floorboards sang when you stepped on it in the dark. Every night, Vera would press a palm to the window, as if asking the forest for permission to rest. Every morning, she braided her hair with twine from wood bundles like a girl stealing an hour from her crown. On the 8th dawn, the birds fell silent. The quiet reached my teeth. I was outside splitting logs. The axe head bit clean, a small truth. Then the air bent like heat above a road. A shuttle shed its cloak over the lake, all mad angles and patience. Drones ringed the trees, polite lights blinking compliance in 6 languages. "Visitors," I called. Vera stepped beside me. No crown, no palace. She wore one of my shirts under a jacket patched with station tape. The shirt made her look dangerous, in a way armor never had. The first soldier we saw didn't show insignia. He didn't need to. The way he held his rifle told me who paid his rent. A second figure disembarked like a thought entering a room and expecting it to rearrange itself. "Matriarch Cade," Vera breathed. "Not mother by blood. Worse. The woman who curated Vera's life like a gallery, who chose the speeches, the friends, the future husband, who carved mercy into a performance and called it education. Cade's coat was a gradient from knight to knife. Her hair was steel. Her eyes were patient as a vault. "Child," she said. Vera didn't flinch. "You don't get that word anymore." "We prefer person of value in official language," Cade corrected, smiling without teeth. "You've caused a storm. I am the umbrella." Drones adjusted. A projector drone floated forward, throwing a pale rectangle into our yard. A contract blinked alive in the mist, claws spined, elegant. "Return to Dominion custody for protective review," it read. "Pending correction of false statements. Memory hygiene protocols, optional upon consent." The line below offered a marriage date, moved up by public necessity. A final clause glittered like a blade in water. Child removal authority in the event of safety compromises. Vera's breath went thin. "There is no child." "Yet," Cade said. "Best to manage the possibility." I felt the axe handle under my palm turn into a choice. "You came all this way to serve paperwork in my yard?" I asked. "To rescue you both from your worst decisions," Cade said sweetly. "General Corbin is impatient. He would prefer spectacle. I preferred tact." "Corbin," I said, scanning the tree line. The general himself appeared like a stain seeping through cloth, jaw smiling, eyes not. "Princess," he drawled. "Jack, I'm touched you spared me. I intend to return the favor." His drones tightened, guns winging down like hawks folding to stoop. Vera slid a step closer until her arm touched mine. Our small life compressed to a knot at the porch edge. Axe, stove smoke, 2 mugs still warm inside. Birds who had opinions about all this and didn't share them. "I leave with her," I said to the drones, and the men who believed they were their voices. "Not to your camps, not to your courts. With her." Cade examined me like a tool misfiled. "Young man, you mistake romance for policy. We're offering safety." "You wrote erasure and called it hygiene," I said. "Memory is a garden," Cade replied. "We prune. Things bloom." "Bodies hang," Vera said. "You taught me to smile beside them." Cade's gaze cooled a degree. She turned to the projector and flicked a finger. Another screen appeared. Our faces, looped from the summit, from the corridor, from every camera I had missed. "I can make you villains," she said. "I can make you a lesson. Or I can make you a wedding." Corbin lifted his wrist. The drones fanned aim. "Take the asset alive," he said to his men, "and teach the boy about manners." I moved first because speed was the only honorable language here. My hand met the axe. The axe met a drone. The drone forgot the word hover. Vera's palm snapped through the projector beam. The contract burst into damp stars. The first shots came as polite warnings. Trees coughing splinters, dirt dancing awake. We did not receive the politeness. "Inside," I barked. "No," she said, grabbing my arm. "Up." The cabin had a hatch to the roof I'd cut from a smuggler's memory. We climbed into cold sun, rolled prone behind the chimney, and turned our home into a ridge. I counted potential angles. She listened to the drones like they were gossip. Left, she said. 3. Corbin overcompensates when he's angry. He pulls his line wide. Noted, I breathed. They tried to smoke us with a dispersal cloud. The stove's vent coughed, then reversed, as if the cabin had decided it was tired of being polite. We crawled to the far edge, dropped into ferns, and became problems for their geometry. Kay didn't shout. She never had to. Her voice reached the yard's center like math. Vera, you cannot live small. The machine will not permit it. Then break the machine, Vera said, not quite yelling, and I wanted to cheer because there it was, the refusal that had not fit any dress. Corbin flanked hard and arrogant. I took his left drone with a nail gun I'd tuned to punch through hub housings. He snarled like he'd bitten a coin. His men folded us with their bodies, prepared to close. We needed a stage. We needed 1,000 witnesses. We needed someone to see us and not be able to unsee. I shoved a cable into the earth, and the stove, and the little transmitter I had kept in a coffee can beneath the porch. The cabin became a mouth. Live, I told it. Everywhere. The chimney flared skyward with a thread of blue light, thin as a prayer and just as stubborn. The forest hummed with borrowed current. My little feet leapt to the nets like a spark, looking for dry grass. On my cuff, the indicator blinked from nobody to everybody. Vera stood up. Cade's hand lifted. Rifles aimed. Vera didn't duck. She stepped into the yard where our mugs cooled, and the contract had died, and looked straight into the lens of a world suddenly attentive. People of the Dominion, she said, and people outside it. You know my name. You do not know my refusal. I was trained to be leverage. I declined the role. Corbin barked an order. I turned my body into a wall that would break, and hoped breaking would be enough time. The first round caught the porch beam. Sawdust sneezed. General, Vera said, eyes on him, voice steady for the feed. I will not trade my mind for your order. I will not trade this man for your story. Stand down. He didn't. Men like him can't hear new grammar. Then the forest joined. Arkans had seeded Nora centuries ago with maintenance organisms that never got decommissioned. Lattice threads and tree bark. Microfilaments teaching moss to hum wind into power. When my cable bit soil, the old network woke. A low, spreading tone rolled through the ravine like a whale finding its pod. Drones quivered. HUDs glitched, trying to read the song. The stove flared again and spit harmless heat. The air wrapped us in a shimmer that wasn't shield and wasn't miracle. It was an old safety protocol waking to a princess's voice. Cade understood first. Her eyes flicked to the trees, as if they had spoken out of turn. Protective acoustic protocol, she said, almost fond. I told them to mothball these. I am forever ignored. Bless their disobedience, I said. The tone thickened. Corbin's rifles began to drift, sights complaining. Not a weapon, an insistence. It made anger feel like a heavy coat. It made shooting a person feel like dropping a child. Half his men hesitated. The other half lied to their hands and fired anyway. The forest bent the shots, not away, but aside, as if asking them to think twice, and twice was enough. Cade lifted her palm. Vera, last offer. Return. You will keep a voice. You will keep parts. Vera's face went very young and very old. She looked at the axe in the grass, at our cups, at me. Then she looked into the feed and said the thing that would not be cut from the record. I choose a small life that is mine, she said. I choose people over dominance. I choose him. And I choose you, all of you watching, to refuse the cages you've been told are furniture. Cade exhaled through her nose, equal parts pride and disappointment, the way a sculptor looks at a statue that has stepped off its plinth and decided to eat soup. Very well, she said, and lowered her hand. Corbin didn't. He lunged through the tone like a drunk through a hymn, shouting, "Asset, now!" We moved together. I met him halfway, not graceful, honest. We slammed into the porch post and broke a piece of the life I'd built with my hands. He swung with a soldier's rhythm. I absorbed with a farmer's patience. He reached for his sidearm. I put my palm over his and left it there, daring his bones to mean it. "Look," I said, and turned his head toward the feed. His face filled the world, a butcher caught with a sermon in his mouth. The tone pressed deeper, vibrating cartilage, asking the question no training teaches you to answer. If nobody orders you, who are you? His gun lowered an inch. An inch is an era. Vera stepped close and did the bravest, most obscene thing in the Dominion. She placed 2 fingers on his cheek, as if he were worth gentleness. "Live," she said again. He froze in that terrible, beautiful space where a man can become different. He didn't take the gift. He wasn't ready. But he didn't fire. Cade watched calculation finish itself. She lifted 2 fingers. Drones pulled back like wolves called home. "Unaligned," she said, sampling the word we had used in the summit's aftermath, a banner without a flag. "You'll try to build a 3rd road." "We'll walk it first," I answered. "Then let's see if it holds." She nodded to Vera, acknowledgement from a jailer to a locksmith, and boarded her shuttle. Corbin followed, gaze torn between orders and the porch that would visit him in dreams. The feed kept breathing. Comments flooded like rain, then like a river finding a lower country. Some cursed. Some begged. Some sent coordinates and bread recipes and laws to repeal. We cut the stream only when the stove hiccuped and the birds began to sing again, as if someone had finally returned the room to them. We didn't dance. We picked up the axe and the mugs. We patched the beam. We wrote a message to the ones who would come tomorrow, asking for instructions, and refused to be their new generals. We offered a protocol instead. Protect, don't own. Reveal, don't humiliate. Build, don't recruit. Forgive, but remember with teeth. That night, Nora's wind spelled itself on our roof. Vera lay with her head on my chest, the formal braids ruined, the station tape jacket thrown over a chair like a retired argument. She traced a circle on my ribs, and the circle meant home. "Still looking, Jack?" she whispered. "Always," I said. Not to inventory her, to witness, to be witnessed back. Somewhere, councils began to rot from the middle. Somewhere, kids learned a new word, unaligned, and tried its taste on their tongues. Somewhere, Cade considered the exact size of a leash that could never hold again, and Corbin stared at his steady hand and wondered why it had stopped. In our cabin, the stove purred, and the fern kept its schedule, and the axe leaned where it could see the door. We had not won a war. We had done something stranger. We had refused to be used. And in the morning, we would lift the truth again, share what we'd found, and go on choosing each other, which turned out to be the most seditious policy of all.